What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Combat Lounge. Today I'm joined by my teammate at Cage Side Press, the one and only Gabriel Gonzalez. Let's get started.
Now fires back. Oh, there's Fury with the right hand. Wilder's hurt. Wilder's hurt. He wobbled. He almost fell over into the ropes. He is tough to go out.
Gabriel, how's it going, man?
What's up, Kate? How you doing, man? Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining, man. It's my pleasure to talk to you. So, you just covered International Fight Week and UFC 290. How was that?
Oh man, it's such a loaded question. Look, it was awesome. Obviously, anytime you get to go to these big events where it's just like eating a full sandwich. I mean, it's just so packed, and you get to do so much more stuff that you don't normally do, even when you're at the pay-per-view events. It's always awesome. I always describe it to people as it's actually sometimes more fun when you get done with it and you go home because you have so much content that you can't really like sit and marinate on because you get into the next thing, which is already going to be bigger. So, it's very exhausting. It's long hours. I think I worked 17 hours on Saturday, so from convention to fight night to getting back to my B&B. So, I don't care how awesome the job is. After 17 hours, the only thing you can be is tired. So sometimes the fun is when you get to go back and you get to look at what you did, and it's like, oh man, it's awesome. And now I'm, well rested and well fed again, and you could actually sit and enjoy it. But yeah, in the moment, it's busy, but you know how much you love doing it. You know how many people want to be there. So it's always amazing to know you're the one actually doing it.
Well, UFC X is like throughout the week, right? On Thursday and Friday, and some goes into Saturday, correct?
Friday to Saturday, but yes,
Friday to
exactly,
Saturday.
yeah.
So, what's the process like? Like when you're on Radio Row, getting fighters to come over and do interviews, and do you just ask the fighters themselves, or do you have to set it up with their PR team? How does that all work? Because you had a lot of interviews.
I mean, it's they're very organized with the PR. You have to go to them. I will say every now and then, sometimes more fighters come in than they were even expecting. So suddenly it starts to be like, hey, who's looking around like they're looking for somebody, and then it's kind of like fishing. You just got to go grab them and reel them in and get it done and pass them to the next guy or girl. So yeah, that's pretty much it. They organize it for you, and obviously everyone wants everybody and time with the big names, so you just try to do the best you can and just be ready to talk to everybody. And yeah, it just, I'm very lucky that second year in a row I got as many people as I did, and it was a good time. But yeah, it's very busy. It's very it's funny because it's such a big event. It's so well organized, but it can feel sometimes kind of like a local show. It's like, hey, you got to get after and get your own interviews. You kind of always got to be looking, and who's looking like they're trying to find somebody to get a fighter interviewed. So it's like, hey, you just got to be very active with it. But it's a great time.
Yeah, man. It looks like a great time. It looks like a place where it's like a tribute to MMA almost, where like all the fans can enjoy themselves. Media. Kind of reminds me of like how the Super Bowl Radio Row was like.
1,000%.
Just not open to fans, to be honest. But kind of in that same environment. But how'd you enjoy the night of fights, man? It was a crazy night of fights.
I mean, once again, like you're so tired, but it was awesome. And like I look at it like when I think of it as a fan, like we have the BMF card coming up in like 2 weeks, right? And it's like, oh man, that one's so good. And you have so many fan favorites, people that fans have gotten invested in for a while. And 290 was more or less maybe some of the new guys. Maybe not everybody is a ride or die Pantoja or what have you. And the night was actually pretty awesome. And when you looked at it objectively, as many finishes as we got, and the fights that went long that turned into a pretty fun scrap. I mean, it was just objectively an amazing night of action. So, yeah, going back to it, it's one of those you almost want to watch it again, just not working and just appreciate it because it's obviously really awesome from Robbie to Drakus and then the title fights and all the finishes, earlier in the night. It just really made for a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched UFC a long time, and I would have to really look back at some things to to give you a for sure answer on this. But I mean, I thought after I had watched it, I haven't watched it back, but after I'd watched it, I was like, man, that was like a top 5 card that I can remember watching on TV, where almost every single fight had action. Now, sitting from a TV is different from sitting cage side. When I watched the fights on TV, I thought Moreno and Pantoja was an absolute war. But Hooker and Turner was insane. When you're sitting there watching it cage side, what was your favorite fight of the night, and what do you think was the fight of the night?
Well, I will say in full disclosure, unfortunately, I did not have a cage side seat. I had the press ledge, which is a lot higher up, but they still take care of us pretty well up there. But no, for sure, I didn't get to go out there because so often I'm the one running our interviews backstage. But what I can tell you is that even in the press room with a bunch of reporters in the PR, there was this sentiment, particularly going into the fight and after that first round, is that this was never a good matchup for Hooker. And obviously, the little things. Does it feel like the milds are getting to him? Bad style matchup, a bit of age, all of this little stuff, and it feels like it's just manifesting as Jalen's getting him in those first 5 minutes, right? Getting the better of him. And then, he turns it on, and you just have this room of reporters who watch this all the time, and they're like he is giving him the business right now. Anytime you could feel that with people who are so invested in this, it's awesome. So yeah, I didn't get to go out there for the Hooker Turner fight. Obviously, like I could tell you, it was one that really created it was a whole vibe and mood backstage for everyone as we're trying to do this interview, and you just see that Dan Hooker's getting it done. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I honestly, when he ate that head kick, I
Oof.
was like, how is he still standing? Like, just the toughness of some of these guys. I mean, all of them, but just some of these guys, just the what they put their bodies through is insane. I mean that was shin to chin. So that was insane. I wanted to ask you though, real quick, while we're touching on this 290 card, Pantoja and Moreno, both guys fought their heart out. Do you think that the judges got that decision right? Did everyone kind of feel that Pantoja won, or was it kind of split?
Oh yeah. Look, it's one of those. It's always tough because anytime it's competitive, you almost want to just out of respect say to the other guy, like, "Yeah, you could have had it," and it's like that was just bluntly what it was—a competitive fight that Pantoja won. No controversy. It was competitive. Obviously, Moreno got his shots in. Obviously, it was back and forth. Obviously, it was not a blowout, but the damage just seemed to accumulate. The bigger shots came in. Control time obviously came up big in that fifth round. So yeah, no controversy as much as just appreciation for what you saw Moreno do. Once again, I mean, we had Robbie Lawler earlier in the night, and when you're used to, banger after banger from this guy, and he has that reputation, to see Moreno once again, he's in another 5-round banger. And I've been there, in person for several of them. it's really awesome. And so the fact that he got into another one and it was as close as it was and it was as competitive as it was great. But yeah, that was still just one. Pantoja is just getting it done, and the judges, I feel, got it right. Competitive, but they got it right.
You see it typically more in like the flyweight division. I would say more so than any other division, but they've fought 3 times. Technically, I believe twice in the UFC,
Yep.
because or all 3 of them actually, but one of them was
UFC affiliate with Ultimate
yeah,
Fighter.
yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is like, would you mind seeing that fight again down the line?
No, I mean, absolutely. Like, I want to. Like, how can you see that one and be like, oh man, I don't want to see this ever again? Um, like anything else, like I look at it as a fan, and let's be honest, it's a little bit of common sense. Let it marinate, let the demand, supply and demand, let it grow again, and then let it materialize. That's when it's more satisfying. That's when you're invested in it. If they were just to run it back in 3 months, I would say, like, well, we're just getting an instant replay. Now it feels unfair because it's like, so are we just supposed to let Moreno keep fighting until he gets it because of this and that? No, that's not fair. And the fans, they know that and they feel that. They let you know that. So I would like to see them fight other people, but absolutely, if they're back in a position to run it back, it's kind of like Valentina and Amanda. It's like there's never a bad time to do it. Just if they're winning and you say it's on, it's on. But for right now, for sure, let them fight other people, particularly Pantoja. Pantoja has earned the right to say, I don't have anything to prove against Brandon Moreno right now. Let me do something else.
Yeah, I mean, you could do. I don't know what you'll do with Moreno, but Pantoja and Brandon Royval makes tons of sense to me.
Yeah, and it's been a minute, so good time to run it back if you're Royval. If you really wanted someone new, obviously Amir Albazi is out there, and regardless of what you think of the Kai Kara France fight, Amir is a breath of fresh air in the flyweight division. So there's obviously options in the event that for whatever reason we are in a world where we just get Moreno Pantoja for next. It's not even objectively a bad thing either. What, like, once again, is that demand maybe there right this minute? No, but it's not like people are going to be like, oh, dang,
Right.
this is going to be a boring one. No. So there's options for them for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you should let it marinate a little bit. I think Moreno should have to go get another win. I think
Yeah,
you can let Pantoja fight Royval. Maybe Albazi and Moreno make sense. I don't see why not.
don't mind
Uh,
it.
but yeah, I 100% agree with you. But I'm right there with you. I wouldn't mind seeing it if Moreno went out and beat a guy, another top 5 guy. Um, Pantoja got past Royval, let's say. That's a tough fight in itself, so who knows how that fight goes. But yeah, I wouldn't mind it either. But I'll say this: I want to wrap up this card with the main event. Uh, Volkanovski just completely looked dominant again. Uh, Yair, tough guy. Fights his heart out, leaves it all on the line every time he's in there. I felt like it was a tough matchup from the get go. Anybody fighting Volk, that's a tough matchup. But I know how bad Yair wanted it, and I felt like he went in there and fought like he wanted it. But again, Volk was just too much. But I'll ask you this, just touching on this, like, what do you think's next for Volk? Because Charles says, October is too soon for him. So do you go that Volkanovski route? But he has hand surgery coming up, but they say, between 6 and 8 weeks, I think is what they said. Do you think October would line up for that fight to happen next?
I mean, once again, it's kind of like the Pantoja Moreno. It's not a bad fight to have next. Wouldn't mind it, but I look at it from a lot of different standpoints. For example, it would feel, like, well, we just got it earlier this year. If you're Islam, it's like that's now high risk, low reward for me. Like now, you just want me to keep fighting Volk until he wins. That's not fair. I don't want that. If I'm his manager, that's not what I'm looking for him for sure. Objectively, I'm sure he's like he could get it anytime he wants. I'm sure he thinks like that as the champion does. I think for Volk, right now with everything 55, whatever happens with Islam, whether it be Charles not in Abu Dhabi, whether it be Poirier or Gaethje, and they just turn it back for Abu Dhabi, whether they give him somebody just different, whether it's Benil, I don't know, how about Leon Edwards could, like Islam, move up, something like that. Just something else. Because I think that for Islam, that's what he's earned to kind of show how far he could take it. You could run it back anytime. For Volk, you got Ilia Topuria right there. And I do think of it as like Floyd Mayweather when he got a young Canelo. Canelo today is very different than the Canelo Floyd got, like almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
So really it's just like, if you're Volk and this guy's on a roll, this is almost like the perfect time because that victory, if you get it over Ilia, is probably only going to age like fine wine. And if Islam is tied up with other stuff, you could do a lot worse than taking out this young phenom who's, very marketable, multilingual, from Georgia, raised in Spain, speaks great English. The hair is good, the beard is good. He's a very marketable guy. You could tell why the UFC is high on him. If you're Volk, take this guy out. You look even better after what you just did to Yair and now Ilya. Now we can talk about, hey, next year, what is Islam doing? Do you want the smoke? Maybe Volk goes in there and he takes out a Benil Dariush or one of the, the BMF guys or Charles or a Conor McGregor. Anything could happen, right? And then you set up a fight for the lightweight title. I think all of that works, but I just don't see Volk moving up next. I think he gets Ilya, gets right, gets healthy, fixes the hand, and they run it late this year, maybe early next year, most likely.
That's how I kind of look at it. Like, same thing with, like, I felt before Aljo moved up, he needed to fight Sean. I just felt that way for some reason. I feel kind of the same way for Volk. Before you're done at 45, please give us the Topuria fight. I think you need that fight at 45. And then, if you win that fight, then move up. It just leaves me, if Leon's going to fight Colby, it just puts me in this weird situation where I'm trying to think, like, what's going to happen with Islam? Because I don't think after UFC 291 that either Gaethje or Poirier is going to be ready for October. So
they shouldn't be, right?
That's what I'm saying. I'm just guessing. If I had to guess, they're probably not ready for October. So it's just interesting what they're going to do with Islam. And it's been a while since we've seen Islam. At least it feels that way. It's February. So
that's where, the UFC doesn't want to do a champ versus champ fight, I think, in this moment, because you want as many champs available to put on pay-per-view cards. That being said, if you know for sure you're getting Conor and Chandler in December, they get it done, then why would you not want that fight? Particularly if you could do a Blachowicz or Pereira versus Yuri in December for the light heavyweight title or something like that. So I think that's, the kind of pickle you're in with UFC. There's certainly options, but yeah, for Islam, I mean, I saw Chael Sonnen bring it up. If Charles isn't ready, he doesn't want the BMFs, then why not Benil? Kind of like that survivor's clause, like, oh, Charles isn't ready, so you get the fight you did want with Benil. I mean, don't hate it, completely. Do I think that he should have to wait for one of the other guys? Sure. If that's not how the business is going to work, by all means, give him Benil. If he has to fight somebody, let him fight one of these big names. But Vulcan Islam next, I just don't see it, because why would you want it if you're Islam? And the fans, you already paid $80-$90 for it. Give it a minute, let it marinate, and then it becomes the kind of fight you want it to be.
Islam has to fight on Abu Dhabi. Volk versus Islam is the only logical fight at the moment. UFC would break the bank for Volk to rush back because they need a huge main event for that card with Islam as the main. I mean, to be honest, a lot of people are going to probably get on me for this, but personally, if nobody's available to fight Islam, I mean, you could – the rankings don't say this is the fight that should happen, but realistically, you could even do Sarukian and Islam again.
Yeah, objectively, not a bad fight. Do I feel, when I look at it as a paying fan, do I lick my chops about paying $80, $90 for that fight. Not right now. Respectfully, not right now. But okay, look, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, there's options. I mean, look, Conor McGregor, just run it back and let's just get crazy. There's options out there. But yeah, if you're Islam, you don't want to fight Volk for the simple fact that it's like, what do I have to gain from it now?
Yeah, like you said, high risk, low reward.
Yeah, also let it marinate. What happens if they lose the fight completely? I mean, Volk had a chance to win it, and he didn't get it done. So sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles, right? And that's just how it is. The fact is, we got the fight once. Now it's on business. Like, I think of it, if I'm Islam, what do I have to gain from it? Like, if you're Islam's manager, if you're Islam trying to make money, like, that's not worth it, Like, so I think if they are that guy, like if you are him and he is him, I know it feels like there's no rule that says there can be only one. Then guess what? They'll keep winning, and that the rematch will be even bigger. But yeah, if I were Ali Abdelaziz, if I were any manager, and I was addressing this situation, I'm like, the BMF, fight him if they're healthy. If Charles isn't healthy, we'll go with Benil. Is Connor and Chandler going to happen? If not, give him one of those two. Go with other options. But why am I going to put my fighter? And if I'm the fighter, why am I going to put myself in this position where that's going to happen? I feel like I'm going to win. Volk's going to win. We'll make it happen down the line.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's just one of those things where everyone in the lightweight division, I mean, I shouldn't say hasn't earned it, but nobody in particular stands out to me where they're like, hey, you deserve the title shot over this guy, or you deserve it over this guy. You have to get Islam another fight this year. So obviously the UFC is the they're the best at what they do. They'll figure it out. But
let me spin it with you this one. Let me ask you this question. Let's say hypothetically Charles still hurt, can't turn it around. The Volk fight's off the table. Justin and Dustin beat each other up. They can't turn it around. If they did Islam, Dariush, Hamzat, Cannonier, is that doubleheader, okay undercard? Is that an $80 card to you? Pay-per-view, let's go. I'm good running the credit card.
I mean, to be honest with you, I pay the $80 no matter what.
Fair enough.
I'm probably gonna pay it anyway. Is it a card that I'm like, oh, that's the greatest card? Maybe not. I mean, Dariush coming off a loss and stuff like that. But even with him coming off a loss like that, Gabriel, Dariush and Islam is a fight I've wanted to see for the last year or two. So I wouldn't be mad at it, but I don't know if that's something that they would be willing to do just because he is coming off that loss to Charles. Honestly, in all honesty, the best way for this to work out for the UFC is if Charles is ready for October. I think Charles and Islam is a fight that it's like, okay, Charles came back and got a really, really clean win over Benil in a fight that some people counted him out in, thought Benil was going to win the fight. Got the first round finish. Ultimately that would be the fight that I would think I would want to see ran back. But if Charles isn't ready, I mean, Benil, Chandler, honestly, you can do Connor. I understand Connor hasn't won anything, but I mean, that's going to sell just because of the
it's Connor. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of routes that they can go. I just don't know which route they will go.
I think the UFC is hoping they could just wait and see if Dustin or Justin zig instead of zag, uppercut, takes the other guy out in under 5 minutes, and it's like, all right, y'all get on ice. You're running it in October. I think that's what they're holding for. I'm sure I hope they don't make an announcement for Abu Dhabi before that card, but if they do, I hope they hold that main event spot potentially. And maybe they just wet the chops with like Hamzat versus Cannonier and hopefully a good undercard. So that's what I would say.
Well, let me ask you this. When did do you remember which month Poirier fought Chandler?
It would have been MSG November, right? I remember
So
correctly.
that was last year, right? So Poirier
Yeah,
hasn't even fought this year, correct?
correct. And Justin
I
got Fiziev in March.
Yeah, so that was what I was gonna say. I think if Poirier was to win the fight at UFC 291, it would be easier for Poirier to say, "Let's do it in October."
Fair.
But Gaethje, because I don't know if my memory serves correctly, he fought Fiziev. They wanted him to take that fight against Poirier in Canada. He was like, no. Then they booked it out for, uh,
This 2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks
July
from
29,
now.
yeah.
So then Gaethje's going to fight March, July, then October. I don't know if he would do it. I don't even know the last time Justin's fought 3 times in a year. So that would be
I mean,
something.
yeah, that's like a 7 month, three bangers in 7 months. I get what you're
Yeah.
saying. What's up, JD? I see you. Look, I agree with you. They're gonna find somebody for Islam. Promise you, they are gonna find. Islam will take somebody. I think that of all the routes, the possibilities we have on the board, Volk is just at the bottom. But they will find someone. And in the event that everybody and their mama is hurt, yes, he wouldn't mind fighting Volk again if it was, the only option. But I promise you, he's gonna have his manager bug him to see, is Connor fighting in December? No. Is Chandler healthy? Does he want the smoke? Okay, we'll do something. But yeah, about the only opponent I don't want for Islam next is Volk.
They did it for Romero when Costa got hurt after their fight. Izzy fought Yoel on a 2-fight losing streak before he even fought Costa. That is a fair point.
Yeah, when the UFC will do it if it means selling a good fight, but
Yeah, it's
yeah,
business at the end of the day.
especially if people are hurt, it's like, well, we need somebody. We're trying to sell pay-per-views, and remember, they're like respectfully, they don't necessarily have a deal with Vancouver and things like that. They have a deal with Abu Dhabi, the same way they just signed a deal with Adesanya. In the same way, Adesanya is getting somebody in September. It may not be Drakus, who, by the way, great fight with Whitaker. We didn't even talk about it. But I mean, if they say Drakus is hurt, I promise you, UFC has told Adesanya, we want that fight. You want that fight. We need to sell this pay per view in Australia. You're fighting Strickland. Drakus is hurt. He's not ready. Why? Because you signed this big contract. You promised these countries, we're going to bring a big fight so you make a lot of revenue. You are fighting somebody. So Islam will get somebody in Abu Dhabi for sure.
Yeah, speaking of that, UFC 290, I know we're lapping it out, but I just want to say, yeah, we didn't talk about that fight. That was another banger of a fight, and that card in general just exceeded expectations beyond what I expected. I mean, I couldn't complain about the card at all. I thought every single fight, from the first fight with Kirk and Ribovic to the last fight with Volkan Yair, was just all great fights. I have no complaints about it. I would love to see Dricus fight Israel Adesanya, especially with all that talking and that beef and everything going on there. I just think I think it would sell. I think that fight would sell. That's just me personally. I think they could put a good card around that.
Oh,
But
that's an easy sell for sure. It's
yeah,
just, yeah, I mean, once again, talk about Dustin, and Justin can't turn it around. I mean, Drakus is like, you have to have a hard camp to do that to Robert Whitaker. You didn't just come off the couch and do it the way he did it. And now you're asking him, on my show, we talked about this. I would tell you Drakus for sure, hell or high water, fights Adesanya in Australia. After what happened with Gilbert Burns turning it around against Bilal, even though it didn't seem like he got hurt against Masvidal and he just looked flat out there, looked like, a bit of burnout. I don't want Drakus to turn it around, to be honest with you. I want that fight to be as big as it can be. I don't think UFC has plans like that, but, that's what it is. Thank you, Patrick.
yeah, Gabriel's the man. He definitely is the man. Great show, boys. I'm locked in. You guys are great ambassadors for Cage Side. Thank you, JD. Appreciate you, man. We're coming up on 30 minutes, and I don't want to waste all your time. I want to just get to this real quick, and then we can wrap it up. UFC 291. I know we've been talking a little bit about the lightweight division, but I didn't ask you, how do you envision seeing that Poirier and Gaethje fight playing out? Because the first time, I think a lot of people tend to forget Justin was 3 fights, I believe 3 fights into his UFC career. And, he's grown a lot as a fighter this last 5 years. Dustin himself has also grown in a lot of different ways, believe it or not. Um, I think this is a win for the fans, no matter who wins. But how do you see that playing out?
I mean, banger. I don't care how it ends. It's gonna end because someone got some pretty solid fist to face in that one. Fair enough to say, and I think they're both gonna do their best to make sure it's kind of like you can't miss with it, right? I think they want to look at Justin more patient, a lot more kicks. I think that's going to be a big part of the diet for Dustin Poirier when they fight. The fact that he's put on some weight, and I think that made the difference against Fiziev, if I'm being honest, in March. All of that makes for a slightly different Justin Gaethje to deal with. Um, for Dustin, I mean, grown more technical. I think just a little bit of that confidence and all that, and what he goes out there to execute. I never like to say it because I obviously just want to say and see them bang, but probably some grappling wouldn't be a bad idea to break up the rhythm of those two. Go for some takedowns, particularly for
For either
Dustin
side,
Poirier. For Dustin Poirier in particular, just because you want to slow down, you want to do something to disrupt that pace. Because one thing about Justin, his shot selection, he knows he's fast, he knows he's got that power, he knows how to make it add up between the punches and the kicks. So anything that can break up his rhythm for Dustin to kind of get combinations off in the middle of the octagon, you want to do. And if that's making him worry about takedowns, that'd be a great option. If you tell me for my money, if it's going to end in a finish, who do I favorite? I'd expect Justin Gaethje just because, that seems to be more his forte and, getting after it. Poirier does throw hands, but I think sometimes it's a bit to like, hey, if the opening's not there, I'm not going to try to, go, 1.0 Cody Garbrandt and just, start blasting. No, I want to take my time, find my openings, get it done. Justin, I feel like, is a little more willing to get in that fire if he smells a bit of blood and kind of force you to go down and, get the finish. So that is what I favor. But look, I mean, they're both strong. They're both multifaceted, great in 5-round fights. I expect nothing less than a banger if they push each other. And yeah, look, they could zig instead of zag, get the knockout, and then they're saying Islam be ready in Abu Dhabi, and all
yep.
of this talk was for nothing.
And that main event's followed, or I'm sorry, there's a
Conceded.
co-main event that's also a banger. Before we get to that banger, Alex Pereira is coming to make his light heavyweight debut. That card is absolutely stacked, 292 stacked. We could go on and on. They're starting to book up these cards and stack them up,
And
and
that
I'm really
the light
excited.
heavyweight title, Blachowicz and Pereira are like, all right, bring it, Yuri. December, let's go. I want a belt.
I thought the UFC may have just said, you know what, Jan and Pereira light heavyweight belt just to make 291 that much more, exciting and stuff like that, to try to sell it and stuff like that. But it doesn't look like they're probably going to do it.
If you tell me tomorrow Dustin or Justin stub their toe and they're out, I promise you they're getting elevated to the title fight. I think though it's like they see it as like we are not in a,
Predicament to need to do that.
we are not in a press the red button situation to add
Okay.
more pay-per-view points to two fighters on this card. So I think that's
Okay,
why
fair
they
enough.
haven't. I think that, and also you kind of want to build a contender for Yuri. And look, you would have wanted Jamal. It didn't happen, get well soon, but you still have a great fight. You can really package the winner of this against Yuri, and it's probably going to be a banger too and easy to sell. So there you go.
My last question to you, just before we end the show, and then I'll let you shout out anything you want to shout out, and then tell the people where they can find you. But you're famous for one thing you do, honestly,
Oh, hit me with it.
outside of International Fight Week, but that's where you usually do it. But how did you come up with the game, that fun little game, Heads Up with the fighters? I feel like that's really like entertaining content, something nobody does. And I feel like you're kind of known for it. How'd you come up with that? And,
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm a fan of the app, like Southern California, we got a lot of theme parks. And when you're waiting in line with your friends and you've talked about everything already. You kind of need something to pass the time. I did see the option that you can make a deck, so that is kind of where I was like, oh well, it would be probably cool to play this with UFC minded friends. But then also, if I'm being honest, like why did I want to try it like with fighters and make it like a thing? I'm a big fan of like watching entertainment reporters and like some of the fun stuff they do for like movies and stuff with the actors and the quizzes and the BuzzFeed style stuff. And it's like, it just seems like such a fun time. It seems like they're having so much fun. Like the actors like the monotony, like breaking up the monotony of
You
it.
could get away from like the interviewing and stuff and just kind of do
Yeah.
the content with.
Exactly. And it was just like, for me, like I find myself going down the rabbit hole and I'm watching these actors and, for movies I'm excited to see and like having fun with it. And I'm like, that just seems like the best time. And so that was really what inspired me to say, no, like, let's actually do this because I think one, I'll enjoy it. The fighters hopefully enjoy it. And if you have those two things, hopefully people like it. Look, if it's not your cup of tea, go watch something else. It's all good with me. But for me, it's like I wanted to make the kind of content I enjoy watching. And so having those two ideas and, really just the latter giving me that inspiration to like, hey, like, why not? Let's have some fun with it. Not necessarily, you know, some outrageous questions, for example. That's not really my thing. I have fun with interviews. I'm not afraid to have a sense of humor. I think everyone just state the obvious and people kind of go along with it. They're aware that you have eyes like everyone else. But, to me, when I think about fun content, that's what I want to do. I want to do something that I enjoy, that feels more personable, that is a little different, and that's why I did it. And yeah, I've had a lot of athletes and UFC people do it. John Anik just claimed the title. He's eight
He is the
correct
world
guesses,
champion, a heads up.
8-0. He dethroned Aaron Blanchfield, and yeah. So now we got to find someone who could do 9-0. So always love suggestions. Always love playing with new people. So yeah, I really enjoy doing it, and yeah, that's I think that answered your question. But yeah, it's a good time. I'm glad you like
I
it.
I personally love it. I've heard a lot of good feedback from some other people in the MMA community that have brought it up, and
Oh, thank you.
me personally speaking, I like it. I sit there and watch them all, so I think it was really cool. That's why I wanted to ask you about it. But Gabriel, we're running out of time. Tell everyone where they can find you if you want to shout anyone out, and thanks for joining me, man. It was my pleasure to have you on, and you're a great teammate for Cage Side Press, man. You're a great asset, man. So I'm happy to work alongside you.
Oh well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, follow me at Double G on TV. Just spell out the word double. A lot of people say it wrong when you see it on Instagram, but on Twitter it makes more sense. And yeah, appreciate it, Cade. And look, we have you on the team. We see you doing it. Obviously, you got your interviews going on out there, and you're doing your thing, and you're on your way. So much respect to you. We're happy to have you. We're always happy to have people who put that effort in and just they don't expect like, hey, we're gonna throw you out there right away. It's like, no, it's a process, and we want people who are ready for this. That way, you can hang with us and really contribute to these big events. So we appreciate the fact that you're out there and you're getting yours and you're getting yourself to the level that it's like, hey, when we pass you the baton, you could run with it when me, Eddie, or the guys can't. So we just a lot of respect. Keep doing your thing, man, and we're happy to have you on the team for sure.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words. When I first joined the team, man, it was great news to me. I was ecstatic. I couldn't stop talking about it for weeks. I still talk about it sometimes, like, just like I can't believe, man, I'm doing this. But like I said, thank you for coming on the show. Let's do it again soon. But this is Gabriel Gonzalez. I'm Cade Morehouse. We're out.